Hello, good evening. Welcome to the Michael Coren Show. It's a Thursday. Yeah, I'm quick, right? And most Thursdays we discuss federal politics. Don't know why. It's pretty boring stuff, but we do. It's a great panel. Let's introduce him. Brad Dogood. He's MPP of Scarborough Centre. He's a Liberal. Peter Leibovich, who's a federal council member of the NDP. Great to have you here, sir.
Thanks.
Richard Ciano, who's National Vice President of the Conservative Party of Canada. Are you going to Montreal?
No, I'll be staying right here.
And watching it on TV. And John Nunziata, who's a partner with the parliamentary group, a former Liberal MP. If I was a Conservative, I'd be quite happy looking at the Liberal race because, frankly, none of them are that impressive.
Well, that's very true, Michael. And the one winner out of this convention this weekend is going to be the Prime Minister. With all due respect to Brad, Gerard Kennedy is a flawed candidate. We've seen that Gerard has no support in Quebec whatsoever. I find it very difficult to think that a candidate with no support in Quebec could win the Prime Ministership in Canada. He's also not really bilingual in any serious sense. Actually, Prime Minister Stephen Harper won 10 seats in Quebec in the last election. So all the other candidates, we go down the list. If it was true that the next Liberal leader would likely be Prime Minister, then you would have had top-tier candidates coming forward for that job. And in fact, they didn't. Frank McKenna stood down. John Manley stood down. They stood down because they saw that the Liberal Party isn't ready to take back the reins of power. We saw it with the return of the Federal Accountability Act from the Senate. Recently, we saw 110 accountability killing amendments come back from the Senate. So, you run down the list of Liberal candidates. Michael Ignatieff, as John said, hasn't been in Canada for most of the last 30 years, holds attitudes which I think most Canadians don't share. We've seen it with the other candidates as well. We have Gerard Kennedy, we have Michael Ignatieff, as we've said. They all don't represent really the mainstream of the party. Bob Rae, when he had his chance to actually govern in Ontario, completely wrecked the public treasury in this province.
But that was when he was wrong. Now he's right. He this great epiphany. He's realised that social democracy doesn't work. It took him a few years. But realistically speaking, look, Dion will be a terrible, terrible leader. He'll be a disaster. Gerard Kennedy in a few years' time, but he could never be Prime Minister. Bob Rae could do it. You want Ignatieff to win, don't you?
Oh, no, I think we're more or less ambivalent about who actually wins the contest, as I said, because the Prime Minister is going to win the next election. But frankly, Bob Rae's record as Ontario Premier was disastrous. He admits that he was disastrous on the actual public finances, and I don't think Ontarians will soon forget the I don't think he's used the word
disastrous. He has said that he wouldn't pursue those policies today. But I mean,
because they were disastrous.
He's an intelligent guy. He's a fairly likable man. I mean, he's a bit pompous and takes himself very seriously, but he's a politician.
Sure. Well, I think they all have political skills. There's no question about that. I think they're all well-spoken, and some of them are slick. But the reality is, when Bob Rae had a chance to govern Ontario, he near wrecked the province. Michael Ignatieff, as we heard, isn't has a perspective that isn't really close to the Canadian perspective.
Well, it depends. I mean, it might be next week or the week after. If we ask him, you really believe that Canadians are saying, I've got to get home quickly. I've got to watch the Liberal conference. Thank the Lord they're not, because they're real people. They're not like these strange creatures who go to party conferences because they're so aroused by backroom deals and party policy and getting the line right. Most people don't care.
And that's all this convention is about. I mean, you asked Brad a very valid question. Name one thing the Liberal Party stands for, this federal Liberal Party, and he couldn't say one thing other than to say that it was an exciting convention.
Give him another chance.
And that there's political intrigue.